Hello, I'm Kyle Green with the Greenway Outdoors. You might be asking yourself, I want to make jerky for the first time, but I've seen so many different ways to make it. Some of them are ground, some of them are just the whole piece of meat sliced thin. And if you're looking for the right ideas to make the best jerky with your wild game, I'm going to show you both today. So we're going to be using the slicer as well as the grinder in order to make ground venison and sliced venison. Then we're going to do a taste test after and see which one we like best. Let's get started. Okay, we're using the LEM Big Bite Grinder, and I've got the foot pedestal here to start it. All I'm gonna do is drop this meat in. Notice I'm doing it the long ways. Comes out that quick. I mean, there's just nothing to it. So you'll see that the pieces of meat are just connected a little bit at the ends, but you just pull them apart. And what's great about this is you're gonna have consistent, perfect strips of meat that are like the perfect size, specifically for making jerky. It's incredible how fast that is. So I've got those done. What you're gonna see right away is that the meat is perfectly sliced, the right thickness for jerky. All you gotta do is just drop it through that attachment and it's good. Sometimes you'll have it held together like at the ends, but it makes it very easy to pull apart and it's like the perfect strips. So now we're gonna move on to grinding meat. So we're gonna take off this attachment and move to the next one. So next step is going to be moved to doing the ground meat. So first step is obviously just putting it through your Big Bite grinder like normal. And this meat is actually venison, which was dry aged. And because of that, it has this super sweet smell to it. We let it hang in a cooler for about 18 days whole. We gutted it, but that was about it. So I'm just feeding this meat through. A lot of times when you're grinding venison, you're gonna add some sort of fat or something to it. In this case, we're just not gonna do that. We're simply going to just leave the meat as is, because you don't really have to worry about fat content when it comes to making jerky. This will be just fine wild. It's about done there. So now we're gonna take off this attachment and we're going to put on what I lovingly refer to as the spreader. The next step is to take off the blade and the grinder here. So we've got those off. And then we're gonna add our 3-in-1 attachment. So this can make burger, snack sticks, and of course today it's gonna make jerky. Okay, the 3-in-1 is attached, so now we've got our ground meat. We're gonna add about 1 ounce of water and enough seasoning. Follow the package, so we're just using this backwoods seasoning jerky by LEM. We went with hickory today, but on the back of the packets, it'll tell you how much to use. I'm just going pretty light today because this is only about 1 pound of meat. Because again, this is a taste test. I wanna see, do I wanna make most of my deer into jerky that is ground, or do I wanna make most of my deer into the sliced? So let's move this up to here. We're gonna put this in the grinder and it's gonna spill out onto the sheet here, and then it's gonna be the perfect size to put in the dehydrator. Okay, so the next part is kind of a two-handed job. It might even be good to have a friend help you. And you kind of just pull the paper at the pace that the meat is coming out so that the strips remain nice and thin and uniform. So I'm just slowly pulling while also adding the meat. I've got perfect, nice, thin strips here that are like the perfect size for jerky. My thought process is really that this jerky is probably gonna be a lot more, tender, easier to bite into, whereas I think the long strips, you're gonna have to really pull them apart. What's nice about this process is the seasoning's kind of mixed in. Like this is ready to go in the dehydrator right now. What happens with the strips is we actually have to marinate the meat, which takes a little bit longer. But these strips are perfect and ready to go in, and obviously already seasoned. So I'm gonna put them up here, and then we're gonna get started with our brine for the strip meat. So next up, we're gonna add some water, and we're gonna add a bunch of the hickory seasoning mix to this. And I mix it with my hands, that's why I always wear gloves. But all you're gonna do is mix this around, and you wanna make sure that your meat is completely submerged and completely broken apart so everything's getting evenly coated. Now, here's the thing. They're gonna tell you on the packages a lot of times that it's like 6 hours, overnight, however long you wanna leave it in there. The longer you leave it in there, the stronger it's gonna get. I like a little bit more lightly flavored jerky, so I'll typically do like 2 hours and then pull it out, but you can make your decision. When it's soaking in this, you're simply gonna put it in the fridge, so we'll put it in there and then we'll get to cooking. So now that we've got the meat on here, we need to flip it onto the rack. So what I do is I put the rack face down against the meat like that, flip it over, and then you take off that rack and voila, you take off the paper and then you put it into the dehydrator. Now we've got that one in there. I wanna cook the other jerky the same amount of time to see if there's any difference there too, if one takes longer than the other. So let's grab those out and get those put on this tray as well. Okay, that's perfect. So now We're gonna throw this in here too. So with jerky, you basically have the option between like 145 to 157 and 3 to 5 hours. Because we're kind of in limited time here, we're gonna make it 3 hours with the highest temp possible. So then the next thing we'll do is go to time. We'll put it in for 3.5, but we'll check it at 3 and see where we're at. All right, it's been 3 hours. And I think what we're gonna find is that the top rack, which is just the stripped cut ones, is gonna be a little bit more done than the ground ones. The ground ones seem to retain water and take a little bit longer to cook. So if you're cooking them together for a competition, these ones might be a little bit more done than these ones, but either way, it's still gonna give us a great taste test. So the first thing I'm gonna do, break into it, kind of figure out what the texture is that I'm working with on just the ones that I cut the long ways. And there's still a little bit of moisture inside. They're still pretty tender. Flavor-wise, it's awesome. We dry aged this deer, so there's a possibility that it's just naturally pretty tender, but I'm impressed by how tender this stayed, just cutting it that way. And now we're gonna move on to what I call our hamburger version, or our ground version of jerky. So that's a completely different thing. Eating this, it's almost like eating a great version of a hamburger mixed with jerky, whereas this is like something that if you were to like buy a cheap bag of Jack Links or something, you're gonna end up with more of this texture. Which one I like more? I think I actually like just the cut version. Perhaps it's because it stayed nice and tender. It's just fantastic. They're both good. It's a preference thing. Just know that with the ground version, you're gonna have a little bit more, you're gonna have more attachments, you're gonna have more work to do. You're also gonna have to put it in the dehydrator longer. But this one, I had to let marinate for a couple hours. So, there's kind of give and take with both. They're both great options, and all the equipment that you need for both these projects can be found at lemproducts.com. Check it out today. I'm Kyle Green. Stay green.